What's up, my fellow emo, pop punk, metalcore music lovers? Matrix here, and you are locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your alt rock scene music fix and the best place to discover your new favorite band. Today we are back. I'm playing catch up on all of those albums that I have missed while I've been away, while we haven't been able to make any content, and today we are only focusing on one album. And that album is Even in Arcadia by Sleep Token. So, with Sleep Token being basically the biggest band in the scene right now, the biggest, hottest band in the world right now, it only makes sense to do a podcast dedicated to them and to this new album. So, that's all that's going to be on this podcast today. We're going to go track by track, which I normally don't do. And we're going to give a little bit of a breakdown on each individual track on this album. And then we'll talk about the overall feel of the album and where it ranks. As always, the link to everything you need from me is in the description of this episode. Matrix Music Review on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Instagram is the best way to keep in touch, keep up to date on all the things happening, especially new updates, tour announcements, playlist updates, all of that can be found over there. If you want to listen to what I'm listening to, head on over to Spotify and save the Control-Alt-Save 2025 playlist to your library. That's where you can stay up to date on all the songs I'm listening to, ones mentioned on the podcast and ones that have not been mentioned on the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment, let me know how I'm doing, let me know if there's anything you want me to cover that I haven't covered yet. And make sure you head on over to YouTube and subscribe at the YouTube channel so I can get some more video content out for you guys. We're still trying to get some subscribers over there so that as we get more subscribers, we can do more video content, more interviews, things like that. So head on over to YouTube and subscribe there. With that, let's jump into the review of Sleep Token's Even in Arcadia. This is Sleep Token's fourth studio album, and it is the much anticipated follow-up to Take Me Back to Eden. And I think before we go into the track-by-track analysis of this album, I think it's very important to mention one thing before we go in here. Take Me Back to Eden was this band's best record and was such a pivotal piece of scene music that there is no possible way that you can compare this album to that one or even expect this album to live up to the hype that that album created. Take Me Back to Eden makes such an impact and had such an explosion effect that we've really not seen in quite some time. It was even more explosive than the Death of Peace of Mind from Bad Omens and that level of rise. Sleep Token took it to a whole different stratosphere here. So going into this album, you have to come in with a fresh mind and know that Sleep Token is not going to be giving you Take Me Back to Eden Part 2. It's going to be something completely different. So knowing that, let's start off with track 1, Look to the Windward. And this has this very electronic lead-in that was interesting to me, that it almost kind of gave me a little bit of pause. I wasn't sure where they were going to go with this. And then they start off their lyricism right away. And the lyricism from Sleep Token, yes, there are some lines that make you think, there's some lines that stop you in your tracks, but sometimes it's just the little subtle pieces that they do to bring the effect to the forefront. Specifically in this song, the repetition of "Halt this eclipse in me." And as you repeat that, then it blasts into breakdowns. Specifically, the one at 3:20 is absolutely fantastic. And Look to the Windward really does show the complexity of Sleep Token, not just in an album, but even just in this song, how complex it is. We have a line in there that says, "Live by the feather and die by the sword." And then right after it, there's a little bit of rapping kind of that comes in. And then it flows right into this beautiful soft vocals over a piano backing track. And all of this is within like 20 to 40 seconds. And that's something that's common all throughout this album and Sleep Token in general is that you never really know what to expect from Sleep Token, and I think that's what makes albums from Sleep Token so interesting to listen to. Moving on to the second song, Emergence. This happened to be the first single off of this record, and there's such a dreamy dreamscape vibe that you feel when you listen to this song and you hear the echoey arms around me part before it blasts into the carbide to my nano and all those other lines that we've heard throughout it. And with Emergence being the first single, I think that is one of those decisions from Sleep Token that really had people wondering what this album was going to be, because it certainly has some heavier elements in it, but then you also at the like 5:25 mark get a saxophone in there, and that's a beautiful change that we usually don't get in some of the heavier music, right? So this is a song that was an interesting choice for a single, and I think it works extremely well as the second song on this album. Track 3 is one called Past Self, which is this super introspective track about how the demons of your past and how you're trying to claw out of the depths of who you were as a past self. And this track really has a fantastic flow to it that really kind of captures the mind and brings you into this space and this headspace where you can kind of feel that you're even evaluating your past self as you're going through this song. The very end of the track has this echoey, I just don't want to be lost again, that kind of drives home the point of once you've kind of course corrected and gotten away from your past self, and if it was somebody that you didn't want to be, you don't want to go back to that moment. You don't want to go back to that time where you were feeling like someone that you weren't or that you don't want to be. So it definitely brought a different introspective vibe on here. The fourth track is Dangerous, and this was the first track for me that really took a bit to get going and make me really kind of even understand what was going on. It has a few decent heavier breaks, but this is definitely not one of my favorites on the album. I don't even have much to say about it other than, it was just kind of okay. And that flows us into song number 5, which is Caramel. Second single off the album, has this almost lullaby feel to the start, and it's almost like it's kind of pulling you in. It's kind of calming you down, pulling you in before you get some heavier parts and breakdowns at like 3:25 and screams and all these different things. And funny enough, the way that I had described this track to people is that it's a wildly danceable track that's also a big fuck you to the haters and we're going to do what we want as a band because it doesn't really matter to us. I mean, you get the lines like, guess that's what I get for trying to hide in the limelight. This is what I have 2020 hindsight. People trying to get a rise out of me because they want to figure out what my real name is and all those different things. And that's something that we've had to deal with Sleep Token over the past year or so since Take Me Back to Eden has come out, is the people trying to figure out who it is that is in Sleep Token and what's their real names, and let's get those out there. I mean, I think I even saw a story that somebody even went as far as to like find a birth certificate. And at that point, like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we attempting to accomplish by figuring out who is in Sleep Token? It doesn't change anything. Does it change your opinion of the band if it's somebody, that you know or somebody that you don't know? For me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Sleep Token is going to be who they are, and it doesn't really matter to me what their name is or where they were born or anything like that. Caramel flows into the title track, Even in Arcadia, at number 6, and it's another super soft piano track that almost feels like a long interlude in a sense. There's definitely some more instrumentation on here. You get some violin, you get some piano, you get some things other than the guitar and drum and your standard stuff that you see. Track 7 is a song called Provider, which feels very religious in the backing sounds. It almost has these like organ pipes sound in the background. And lyrically, it's about being there for someone, and it's just about being everything for that person. And it's another example of how Sleep Token has one line here, two lines here that are so creative and so different that you've never heard it before and you'll probably never hear it again. Specifically, I'm referring to a line that says, "I'm going to garner you in silk like a spider, and my fingers are going to foxtrot. Your fingers are going to foxtrot on my skin." Those are absolutely amazing ways of describing certain things. The fingers foxtrot on my skin line blew me away because I was like, that is not even something that I've heard of. But then when you think about it, you're like, okay, I can see and visualize, somebody doing that to me. Track number 8 is a track called Damocles, which was the third and I think final single at this point. And we get more crazy words being used in here: alabaster, discordance, and it's an introspective song all about figuring out who you are. And specifically in this track, Vessel is trying to figure out himself. And I think it's interesting that this introspective writing really is coming through as a main theme in this album. And there's a line in Damocles that says, "I can't always be killing the game." And it's almost as if Vessel knows that people are going to have shit to say about this album. They're going to say it's not as good as Take Me Back to Eden. There's some sort of problem with it. There's some sort of issues with it. And the pressure that comes with it just has to kind of be rolled off, or else you're never going to be able to deal with it. And I like that this album has a lot of these like mid to slow tempo songs, but they're still very heavy on the drums, still very heavy on the electric guitar sections, and it doesn't feel like it's a complete deviation from what Sleep Token is as a band and what we've come to expect from Sleep Token as a band. The 9th track is Gethsemane, which is basically a track where I have to ask, who hurt you? Because this is all about changing for someone who doesn't appreciate you. You're trying to change and trying to be what that person needs, and you're just always being hurt and always being, kind of destroyed by their actions. And that's another theme on this album, and it is just pain, whether it's personal, whether it's emotional, or even professional. We hear Vessel talk about his struggles with fame a lot in this record, whether it's fame with, the struggle of trying to keep himself in the limelight or being in the limelight, whether it's the struggle of trying to write new songs that he feels are going to connect with people. We hear all of that through here. And the final track on this album is a song called Infinite Baths, which for some reason has to be 8 minutes, but that's nothing out of the ordinary here for Sleep Token. And it's a great way to end an album like this. There's some beautiful melodies in there, and there is an absolutely insane scream, growl at the 5:30 mark, which almost feels like Gollum got a feature on this track, but there's so much variation going on in that track as well, and it kind of just sums up, even in Arcadia, kind of perfectly into one final hurrah here. And so that's kind of a track-by-track analysis of Take Me Back to Eden. So when we put this album together as a whole unit of 10 tracks, and what do we think of this? I think this is an extremely solid record, and I think it sits at the 9.4, 9.5 range for me personally. I don't know that I can consider this a 10 out of 10, a perfect record, because there's just some parts in there that I don't love. But what I want to touch on here is that this album does have something for everyone. I think if you're trying to introduce people to heavier music, this is an exact place where you'd want to start. You can get some softer stuff, you can have some dancier stuff, you can have some heavier stuff, and it's not all one or the other. And I think I've seen a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this album, especially since it's been out for a month or two now at this point, by the time this review's coming out for you guys. But I think where I land on this is that when we have a band like Sleep Token that has such a meteoric rise with an album like Take Me Back to Eden, where almost every single song is in some way, shape, or form going to have a massive, massive amount of people saying that this song is the best, this is their best work, and the tours are selling out, and the mystery is still there, and the intrigue is still there. It's going to be really hard for fans not to compare it to the next body of work, which in this case is Even in Arcadia. And this is not new. This is not something that's new to the scene. This is not something that's new to music. It just so happens to be that this is the biggest band in the scene, and it's the first time we're seeing it in a very long time. I consider it in the same lines of how, most people compare everything to Sempiternal for Bring Me the Horizon, or A Fever You Can't Sweat Out for Panic. And things that are almost universally regarded as a band's best work, everything after that gets unfairly compared to what is currently out there in the world. And I think sometimes you just have to remove that amazing, awesome body of work and say, you know what, we know that's the best. Same reason that you can remove like the worst thing from a band's catalog too. I mean, most people are not going to sit here and say that, I don't even remember the name of Panic's last album, but that is certainly not their best work, and it's certainly not even something that we associate with that band much anymore. So this is what I'm trying to get to here is listen to Even in Arcadia as if it was Sleep Token's first or second album. Don't think of it as the follow-up to Take Me Back to Eden. I think if you do that and you disconnect the two bodies of work, I think you'll have a much better time with Even in Arcadia than if you try to say like, okay, let's see if Sleep Token's still going to be doing like more from Take Me Back to Eden. Because I do think there is a little bit of an experimental aspect to this album from Sleep Token. And I don't want to say experimental in the sense of like trying to do something completely different. It's more in the sense of, I think they're trying to determine, is their style something that they can adapt and twist into becoming more popular and more mainstream without compromising who they are and what they want to do. I think that's one of the things that this album does try to do, and I think it does it well, because I think a song like Caramel definitely could have a lot of mainstream appeal. I could even see a song like Damocles having an appeal, which is also why I think those were chosen as singles, and I think they did pretty well. So let me know what you've thought of the Sleep Token record, Even in Arcadia, as we've gotten, a few months into having it with us. Is it still one of your top favorites? Is it the top album for you this year? It's definitely going to be on the list. I don't know how high, but it's definitely one of my favorites so far this year, albeit in a different light than what we've had in the past. So if you haven't checked it out yet, which I can't imagine you haven't, but if you haven't, go check out Even in Arcadia by Sleep Token. That wraps it up. I just want to talk about one thing real quick. You guys got my Warped Tour recap episode on Wednesday this week. And naturally, as I post on Wednesday about the podcast, I get a text message that it's coming back for 2026 in Washington, D.C. I'm kind of excited about it. I know there's been a lot of mixed feelings. I've definitely seen a lot of shit with security being a problem for some people as you got closer to the barriers. And that just wasn't my experience because I stayed a little bit further back. So hopefully some of these problems that are coming to light as we get, a week or two out from Warped Tour get solved before next year. But if you haven't seen that post yet, Warped Tour DC is coming back June 13th and 14th, 2026. Pre-sale tickets go on sale on Friday. Go get them if you want to get them. Try to get them ahead of time. I know I'm definitely going to be trying to do that. And if not, you guys will see me there next year. And we'll be doing the same kind of stuff. So looking forward to that. That wraps it up for us here on Matrix Music Review. I hope you guys enjoyed this review episode. Getting back into doing more reviews. I got a ton more reviews to do, and it won't just be one-offs here and there in terms of albums. We're going to go do our standard review episodes coming up very soon. We got more to talk about. We got Acres. We got Arrows in Action, we got Knox, we got Magnolia Park, we got Scowl, we got a ton to go through. So stick around, and I will be back very shortly with more reviews, more music, and introducing you to your new favorite band. I will see you guys next time.